Who were the draft day winners and losers? I'm here to bring you those answers to those questions. Super excited to talk about this, so we're just going to jump right into it. First, we're going to start with the draft day losers. I think the losers are pretty obvious, you know what I mean? But we're going to start with the first one, Cedric Tillman. The Browns drafting a lot of wide receivers I don't think is a bad thing for Jerry Judy. We'll talk about that one later. But I do think it's a bad thing for Cedric Tillman because Denzel Boston, he does exactly what Cedric Tillman's supposed to do there. Now, he's not just going to get cut straight up. I'm sure the Browns are going to try to find a way to roster him this season. If they can't roster him, maybe they might try to trade him because there is some promise with Cedric Tillman. He's not a complete lost cause as a prospect. And if you have to keep a 6 wide receiver, I think Cedric Tillman makes a lot of sense because he can at least block, has some good size, and there's some upside there for him as a Z receiver. But there's no debating that the Browns bringing in 2 extra bodies there at wide receiver, it does put his roster spot in a less secure spot than it was before the draft, for sure. So if we're looking for big losers based on what happened in the draft, Cedric Tillman's the first person a lot of people think of. The next loser is Dillon Gabriel, right? Dillon Gabriel was always in a rough spot after Kevin Stefanski got fired because he has long been rumored to be the pet project of Kevin Stefanski, somebody that Kevin thought he could develop into maybe a Brock Purdy level, Bo Nix level starter, right? That was the hope for Kevin Stefanski with Dillon Gabriel and why the Browns spent a 3rd round pick on him. That's what the vision was from the last staff. But when coaches change, so do plans. And some people benefit from a coaching change and plans changing. Some people don't benefit. And Dillon Gabriel certainly in the don't benefit from that. So he already did not benefit from the coaching change. You can tell that there's not really that much enthusiasm from him about him from the staff. I don't think he got first team reps during the little mini camp that they had recently. And then we get to the draft and the Browns take Taylor Green. Now, it's possible that Dillon Gabriel could stay on the roster with Taylor Green and the Browns just simply carry 4 quarterbacks. But if they do choose to only roster 3, who's going to be the odd man out? Unless Taylor Green has a terrible camp, it feels pretty obvious who the odd man out's going to be here. So Dillon fighting a even more uphill battle than he was before, which is unfortunate for Dillon Gabriel. I feel bad for him at this point. I'm going to be honest. Like, not really that much of a believer in him as a player, but just like on a human level, he's been dealt a rough hand, man. Like, he's been dealt a rough hand. Like, he gets to Cleveland, nobody wants him. He gets booed while he's out there. The coach who pounded the table for him basically has to bench him in the middle of the season. And then the coach who pounded the table for him isn't even there anymore. He gets fired. You're kind of stuck in Cleveland where the fans don't really want to see you. It doesn't seem like the new coaching staff wants to see you. This is about as rough of a start as anybody could ask for at the quarterback position. And unfortunately for Dillon Gabriel, he's the star of that movie. So that's rough for Dillon. We'll see what happens. Hopefully he overcomes some odds and is able to do something productive for the Cleveland Browns at some point this season. But yeah, I can't help but look at him and say he's a guy who's probably in a worse spot, on the Monday after the draft than he was on Wednesday. And then the last 2 I have here are DeJuan Jones and Zach Zinter. Browns drafted a lot of offensive linemen. The Peyton Barber pick, who's either he's going to play guard or tackle. It seems like they're going to try him out at tackle first. That feels like DeJuan should be worried, right? Don't know what their belief is in DeJuan Jones at the current moment. It seems like Andrew Berry is pretty optimistic about him, but, not as optimistic as some people thought. Like, some people thought the Browns weren't going to draft the tackle because they had DeJuan Jones. Like, that was batshit insane. And it proved to be batshit insane. They drafted 2 tackles. So yeah, I think Dewan is certainly at a questionable spot, and I think the big problem with him is one, there's been multiple times the team has had to argue with you about weight, and two, on top of weight being a problem, multiple lower extremity injuries. It just puts you in an unreliable bucket for the team, and that's going to make them want to just look for more options. So that's the issue with DeJuan Jones. Zach Zinter, he's similar to Dylan Gabriel, where I feel like he just had the worst start to his career he could have possibly had. And it's not really about him as much as it's about the situations he was put in. So Zach Zinter was here. He got drafted the same year that the Browns had Andy Dickerson. And I think he was brought in to do what Andy Dickerson wanted to do, right? The Browns were trying to, be a more powerful team up front, be a more a short area kind of like duo team with Zach Zinter. And that's kind of what Zinter was brought in to do. His first preseason was actually pretty good. But then Dickerson fell out of favor with the coaching staff and the organization pretty quickly into his run here in Cleveland. And then he ends up getting replaced by the end of the year. They go back to the Stefanski style and what it is that Tommy Reese wants to do. So it's going to be more of a split between gap and zone. And that's not really what Zach Zinter can do well. And then those guys get fired. They bring in Todd Monken, and now you're basically running all gap scheme. Todd can act like he's going to run a bunch of different things, and he might run some, but he's going to be a 60% gap scheme guy. He's been so his whole career. So now they're running gap, which means, more emphasis on athleticism on the interior. That's not Zach Zinter's bag. Zach Zinter's bag is being powerful. So that presents another issue there for Zach Zinter in Cleveland. It's just a rough start. I think he's going to be better off once he hits free agency and he gets to choose somewhere that makes sense for him. I think he's in that same bucket as Tommy Togiai of guys who could leave and be better off because for whatever reason they were brought in to do something that the Browns don't do anymore, right? Like Tommy Togiai was kind of one of the victims, the casualties of Jim Schwartz coming in. And he turned out to be a fine player, with Houston. Same thing probably going to be true with Zach Zinter. I don't think it's going to work out here. The Browns don't seem to have any plans for it to work out here, but, maybe somewhere else it will. We're going to get to the winners in just a second, but I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks, first. Hey, let me talk to you about my sponsor for this year, PrizePicks. It's a fun way to win cash while you're watching your favorite teams. Forget complex betting rules. Their app is designed to be incredibly easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Speaking of, here are my picks for this upcoming NFL season. They have Myles Garrett at 14 sacks here. I think he will get more than 14 sacks. Joe Burrow at 3,875 passing yards. I think he'll be a 4,000-yard passer. I'm going to go with more. They have Derrick Henry at 1,224 yards. I'm going to go less than that. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You can follow me on the app at KWEN_C to see all of my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineups when you download the app using the link in the description. So who are the winners of the draft who are on the roster already? I would say Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson are one of the big winners of the draft. Don't know who's going to end up getting the starting job. I would have to imagine it's Shedeur Sanders, but right now it's a competition. I think it's a competition that they want Shedeur to win, and they really, really want him to win it, but they're still going to leave the door open a little bit for Deshaun Watson. It's been clear that that's what they want to do. You can argue about that in the comment section down below. I've said my piece on the quarterback situation of this team. But one of those two guys are going to start. It's probably going to be Shedeur. And whoever that person is, if they can stay out there the whole season, because, again, that's not guaranteed. You throw a bunch of interceptions early on in the season, you're going to get benched. That's really what it is. This isn't like last year where they're rookies and we're talking about, oh, well, we're going to give them 8 games no matter what, right? Like that's kind of how it worked last year. This year is different. You are out there for as long as it makes sense that you are the best option to win at the quarterback position. So if Deshaun Watson goes out there and 3 weeks into it, it's obvious he's not the best option to win, or he's playing so bad that you have to consider other options, then you got to get rid of him. If Shador gets out there and he's throwing a bunch of interceptions and you got to move on to somebody else, you got to do it, right? There's no obligation to play players a certain amount of time this year because they aren't rookies anymore. You got your sample out of Dillon Gabriel last year. You got 7 games out of Shador. You should know what they bring to the table and what they can improve on and what they've shown improvement on based on what the training camp and all of that. But you're not going to sit there and mandate amount of games for any of these guys this year. They're going to be out there as long as they can stay out there. So if you're those quarterbacks and you know you're in that situation, the same situation Joe Flacco was in last year and Dillon Gabriel was in last year, you want to make sure that there's enough safety nets around you so you don't get in trouble or so you don't get to the point where they got to bench you. The Browns did a lot to address that. They addressed the offensive line fully in the free agency period and in the offseason. You can't say the Browns haven't invested. Wide receiver, say the same exact thing. Can't say the Browns haven't invested at wide receiver. They spent a second-round pick at wide receiver. They spent a first-round pick at wide receiver. So fully invested at wide receiver, fully invested on the offensive line. There is no reason you cannot be successful in this quarterback. Well, no, I don't want to say successful because that's a loaded term. There's no reason you can't demonstrate value at the quarterback position if you have it this year. I don't know what that's going to look like win-loss record-wise. I don't want to set an arbitrary number here or there. But if you have potential to be a starting quarterback relatively soon, you should be able to demonstrate it, and it should lead to wins more often than not. You have enough around you to be able to do that. So no more having to kind of control for certain things that aren't there, right? Like wide receiver or offensive line. Now we can just evaluate this quarterback room, and whatever it is that we see by the end of the season, we can make a move off of that, whether it's positive or negative, whether Shador blows us away and he takes us to the playoffs. We can make the move and say, all right, this is what he looks like with help around him. Let's commit to him. Let's give him some money. Let's extend him. Let's move on with this thing, right? But if it goes the other way and it doesn't look like Shador's that promising, it doesn't look like Watson's that promising, then we can look forward to finding other options. So either way, we are building this team to be a place that's easy to play quarterback and an attractive place to play quarterback, so that if we do have to go shopping, we can sell this offense to somebody, right? New offensive coordinator. Well, it wouldn't be new offensive coordinator next year, but you got an offensive coordinator who's credited for helping a quarterback reach a whole new level to their career. All of those things you have there. So no reason for us to be sitting here having the same conversations we had last year. And as long as we're far away from that, I'm good. I'm happy with that. This is the best possible situation for these quarterbacks to be in. The second winner, I don't think many people would have guessed this, is Jerry Judy. I think Jerry Judy's been put in a position to succeed because last year kind of flew under the radar because, look, there's no denying Jerry Judy became one of those guys that like the fan base loves to hate. And when you are one of those guys that the fan base loves to hate, they cut you no slack, right? They don't give you any benefit of the doubt. They don't give you any context or nothing. Like, it just is what it is, right? And Jerry Judy became that guy to multiple sections of the fan base. But what Jerry Judy did demonstrate, what did happen to Jerry Judy, rather, is that Jerry Judy struggled being the absolute number one option, right? When there is nobody to take any attention off of Jerry Judy, he's going to struggle, right? He's going to struggle a lot. I thought he did a lot better later in the season when Harold Fannin started to step up. and produce at a higher level, you started to see a lot more from Jerry Judy because teams had to think more about what they want to do. Now they can't really focus and key in on Jerry Judy as much, right? Now they have to focus in on KC Concepcion, Denzel Boston, Harold Fannin. They have a lot more things to focus on, which is going to make Jerry's life a lot easier. I expect him to look closer to what he did his first year in Cleveland than what he did last year. I also think he just had an outlier year in drops. You guys know, like, even when Jerry Judy got traded here, I've always pointed out he's had issues catching the ball in certain situations and especially catching through contact. That's still going to always be true for Jerry, but like the number of drops that he had last year, I feel like that was just kind of one of those years where the drops just kind of blow up on you. But yeah, I think Jerry Judy's going to be much better this year because he has a lot more help there at wide receiver. And then the Browns defense is a big winner from this one. Somehow finding a way, despite the fact that the Browns have all the resources to spend on offense, finding a way to walk out this draft with a player who could become a core part of your defense in Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Huge win, right? The Browns are trying to avoid the Browns are trying to avoid what happened to the offense to that happening in the future to the defense, right? The Browns offense used to be the main sell for this team. But what ended up happening over a number of years was that the Browns offense got so neglected that they never refilled it or replenished it, and then everything got rotten, right? But it was time to get Amari Cooper out of here, and then you replaced him with Jerry Judy, but then you didn't really replace any of the other pieces at wide receiver. And then on top of that, David Njoku gets older, the offensive line gets older, Nick Chubb gets hurt, and the next thing you know, the offense is in disrepair, right? A couple years of not maintaining the building, it falls into disrepair. It's not really a shocking story. The defense could be that same way, but the Browns are still continuing to restock it. We'll see what they do next year. I hope they continue to restock the groceries next year, but solid job so far this year. But that's my thoughts on the winners and losers from the draft. Let me know who you have as your personal winners and losers from the draft in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.